All right, so let's go ahead and get started. My name is Ryan O'Neill. I'm the clinical office supervisor at Iris. So happy to see everyone on here. We had 26 people sign up for this event, and which is one of our most popular. So I'm really excited to have you guys here today. And I wanted to give a little background on our presenters. So our first presenter is going to be Caitlin Russell. She is a registered dietitian and cancer coach. Some of you may have worked with her through some nutrition. She's usually our nutritionist that we refer our patients to. So you may have worked with her that way. Caitlin specializes in medical nutrition therapy for cancer thrivers and individuals managing chronic conditions. She holds a master's degree in nutrition from Georgia State University and completed her dietetic internship at Emory University. After her experience with stage 3 breast cancer, Caitlin combines clinical expertise with lived experience to support healing, resilience, and confidence around food. Thank you so much, Caitlin, for joining us today. And let me give a quick intro of Chef Nadia Deljoux. She is a professional chef and culinary educator. Nadia is the chef and owner of Del, an Atlanta-based boutique private dining and meal prep company focused on Middle Eastern and Mediterranean cuisine. Her cooking philosophy centers on plant-forward meals, bold herbs, bright citrus, and warm spices. Nadia is passionate about helping home cooks create flavorful, nourishing meals with the ease and confidence, and she's going to make a great dish for us today. So thank you so much for being here, Nadia.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. Okay, can everyone hear and see okay? Anyone having any issues? If you do, put something in the chat and I'll be watching that. But if we're ready, I can go ahead and turn it over to Caitlin, and she's going to tell us some nutrition information and tips.
Thank you, Ryan. So, hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for being here. I am super excited to talk about nutrition and breast cancer recovery, breast cancer prevention. It's always a good time to talk about nutrition. So before we begin, I want to ask a question that many people ask after a breast cancer diagnosis, and that is there anything that I can do with my food choices to support my body moving forward? I don't know if that's anything that you've ever thought of on this journey. So it's a really important question because you might have had surgery, chemo, radiation, maybe you're on targeted supplements and pharmaceuticals that can treat the cancer. But many people are still left wondering what they can do day to day to support healing, more energy, and just overall long-term health. So today we're going to talk about one of the most researched eating patterns for overall health and cancer survivorship, which is the Mediterranean way of eating. And we're going to talk about how we can translate that into simple meals that you can make at home. So just real quick, Ryan already introduced me, but I am Caitlin. I am a dietitian in private practice. I work in partnership with Iris. So when their patients would like help with nutrition, I see clients virtually and in person, both with and without cancer. I'm also a breast cancer survivor. So this is definitely, everybody here holds a special place in my heart for many different reasons. So today we're going to talk about how food can support your healing, your energy, your long-term wellness after treatment. The Mediterranean way of eating is one of the most researched eating patterns for overall health and for cancer survivorship. After I share some key principles, then Chef Nadia is going to show us how to turn these ideas into a simple, delicious meal that you can actually make at home. So thank you, Iris, for having us present today, and let's get started. So after breast cancer treatment, many people start asking that really important question: what can I do now to support my body moving forward? And nutrition is one very big piece of that puzzle. There's a lot that goes on with cancer treatment in general, and, of course, breast cancer treatment, where things can feel kind of out of your control. but nutrition is something that you absolutely have control over. So the foods that we eat influence inflammation in our body. The food that we eat influences our hormone balance, our metabolic health, and our immune function. So all of those systems play a role in recovery and long-term health. So nutrition affects things that you feel every day, like your energy, your muscle strength, your digestion, your overall well-being. And the goal here is not to follow a perfect diet. I always tell my clients, I am not the food police, right? This is about building habits. It's about building a strong foundation so that you can enjoy life, so that you can enjoy those fun foods that we all like, but building habits that are realistic and sustainable, okay? So small changes practiced consistently can have a meaningful impact over time. So when researchers look at dietary patterns associated with longevity and lower rates of chronic disease, the Mediterranean way of eating, it's always at the top. This eating pattern comes from countries surrounding the Mediterranean Sea, where traditional meals emphasize whole foods and simple preparation. So instead of focusing on strict rules or eliminating large categories of foods, the Mediterranean pattern focuses on what to include more of. It encourages meals built around vegetables, whole grains, healthy fats, fish, and plant-based foods. So one of the reasons it works so well is that it's flexible and enjoyable. It's not about restriction. It's about building meals that nourish the body while still tasting great. So when we break this eating pattern down, some of you might be like, I don't know how to cook Mediterranean food. Like, don't I have to go to a foreign country to do that? No, 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 no. We have so many Mediterranean choices in the grocery store that you may not even be aware of, right? So with Mediterranean eating, there are a few food groups that show up consistently. So vegetables and herbs play a big role. They're often making up a really large portion of the plate. Whole grains like farro that we'll see today, barley and quinoa, they're commonly used instead of more refined grains. And then healthy fats are another cornerstone. Olive oil is the primary fat used in cooking and dressings. And then legumes such as beans and lentils, they provide fiber and plant-based protein. Fish and seafood are eaten regularly with Mediterranean eating, and they provide high quality protein and beneficial omega-3 fats. So when these foods come together, they create balanced meals that support both nutrition and satisfaction. Now, there is also growing research that looks specifically at how this style of Mediterranean eating supports you after cancer treatment, right? So it's really good for prevention, and it's really good while you're going through treatment. And then it's also really, really important after treatment. So the Mediterranean eating style patterns are associated with lower levels of inflammation in the body. They also support heart health and metabolic health, which are especially important because some cancer treatments can affect those systems. So studies have shown improvements in energy levels and overall quality of life among cancer survivors who follow this type of eating pattern. So the goal is not just for prevention, it's also supporting your body during survivorship and helping you feel stronger and healthier moving forward. So one of the main reasons that Mediterranean eating works so well is because it includes many foods that help balance that inflammation that I keep talking about. So colorful fruits and vegetables, they contain antioxidants that help protect the cells. I always think, colorful fruits and vegetables, it's nature's way. It's Mother Nature's way of saying, eat me, eat me. They're attractive, right? With those bright oranges and reds and greens and purple. So colorful fruits and vegetables, they've got the antioxidants. Olive oil contains compounds called polyphenols, and those support our heart and our metabolic health. Fatty fish like salmon that we're going to talk about today provides omega-3 fats, which are very anti-inflammatory versus like omega-6 fats, still important. We can still have that kind of fat in our diet, but those can be more inflammatory when we have too much of them versus we need more omega-3 fat. So fatty fish like salmon, olive oil, those are great sources of omega-3 fats. And they've been studied for a long time for their role in supporting cardiovascular health and inflammation. And then whole grains. We love our carbs. Carbs are not a problem, okay? So whole grains provide fiber, which supports our gut microbiome. And our gut microbiome lives mostly in our colon, right? And our colon has probably about 4 pounds of microbes. Can you believe that? Right? So we're walking around with trillions and trillions of these good gut bacteria that dictate our immune system and how our immune system works. They control neuro inflammation. So if we feel good neurologically and many, many other things, right? So it's very important that we feed our gut microbiome with what they need because we're the hosts for them. Okay. So we need to feed them what they need to thrive. Not we want to thrive. Well, they need to thrive so that we can thrive. And fiber does that. Okay. So beans, legumes, a legume is anything that is like a pod. So when you think of like snap peas, anything with the seam that you can kind of split open and there's little beans inside, those are called legumes. So peanuts, soybeans, edamame, black beans, chickpeas, all of those grow like that, and they're legumes, and they provide fiber. Lentils are amazing. Okay, so if you don't like lentils or you don't know how to cook them, it's time to start. Okay, so we're learning more and more about how gut health plays a role in immune function and overall health. So when all of these foods that I've talked about are combined regularly, they create a pattern that supports the body on multiple levels. So let's take these concepts and turn them into a real meal. So the dish that Chef Nadia is going to be demonstrating today is a farro bowl with roasted salmon, pesto, and blistered cherry tomatoes. Sounds so good. And what I love about this dish is that it includes several Mediterranean nutrition principles all in one meal. So it's got your whole grain, which is farro. Farro cooks pretty much like rice, okay? And it's really good. It's got a nice bite, a nice texture to it. It's got a healthy fat source. It's got high quality protein from fish and those antioxidant rich vegetables, right? So meals like this are a great example of how nourishing foods, they don't have to be complicated, right? And you can swap things around. You're like, I can't find farro, or I don't really like fish. Maybe not, I'm not sure, but maybe she will talk about, what we can swap for some of these things later. Maybe in the Q&A we can talk about that, okay? So let's look at some of these ingredients and why they're beneficial. So farro is an ancient grain. It's an ancient whole grain that's rich in fiber. And remember, fiber supports gut health. We, as if you're a female, we need about at least, okay, this is the minimum. We need at least 30 grams of fiber a day. And if you're a male, at least 35. Now, there's no upper limit to fiber. There are some cultures around the world that get 200 grams of fiber a day, and a lot of them, they don't know what colon cancer is. They don't have a word for it. So we need to do better. with fiber. Most Americans on average get 12 to 15 grams of fiber a day. So we got some work to do there. But we're going to learn today how to do just that, right? Grab an apple, right? Apple with the skin has fiber in it. Grapes have fiber in there. Broccoli with broccoli stems, lentils, fiber, right? It all adds up, right? So at least 30 grams of fiber a day for women. You can get more though, right? If you're going from 12 grams and you're trying to go up to like 40 grams, I wouldn't do that in a day because that can cause some gas and bloating. It can take time for your microbiome to get used to that amount of fiber. So do a little bit at a time, okay? Maybe 2 or 3 extra grams a day and slowly build up. Now, fiber supports your gut health, as I've already mentioned. It also helps with blood sugar stability, right? So we want to have healthy blood sugar levels. We don't want to have like spikes and falls and, like a roller coaster. We just want nice, even rises and falls throughout the day after eating. Okay. And then salmon, as I've mentioned, is a great source of omega-3 fats, and these support your heart health and they provide anti-inflammatory benefits. Cherry tomatoes, they are so full of nutrition. They contain antioxidants, including lycopene, and that supports your cellular health. You have trillions of cells all over your body. And so lycopene's really beneficial for those trillions of cells. Olive oil is one of the most studied healthy fats. It's an essential part of Mediterranean eating. It's been linked with, as I mentioned, heart health, metabolic health. So you can be at a healthy weight, right? And so when you combine all of these ingredients, you're creating a meal that supports the body in several ways. Now, one thing I love about Mediterranean cooking is that it focuses heavily on flavor from natural ingredients. So instead of relying on heavy sauces or large amounts of, added sugar or salt, Mediterranean-based meals are often built around herbs and spices, citrus, olive oil. So fresh herbs like parsley, basil, mint, they can completely transform a dish. And then lemon, it adds brightness and balance to a dish. And garlic and spices really create that depth of flavor. And garlic is really good to feed your gut microbiome, and onions are too. And so these ingredients allow your meals to feel really satisfying and vibrant while still supporting your overall health. Now, I know Chef Nadia, she specializes in Middle Eastern cooking and Mediterranean cooking. And so you'll see that many of the ingredients and the techniques, they really align beautifully with, Mediterranean, Middle Eastern cooking, those nutrition principles. So there's an overlap between Mediterranean and Middle Eastern cooking. And although they come from kind of slightly different regions, they share many of the foundational ingredients. So they rely heavily on olive oil, fresh herbs, vegetables, whole grains, and they emphasize really bold flavors from those ingredients like garlic, lemon juice, and lots of spices. So today's recipe, it reflects kind of, a blend of those traditions. And one of the most important things that I want you to remember is that healthy eating really should be enjoyable, right? Food, it's not just about all this nutrition, right? It's also about your culture, your connection and pleasure, right? So we really want to enjoy the food that we're eating. And Mediterranean, Middle Eastern cuisines, they both celebrate food as really something that should be shared and enjoyed. It doesn't have to be a huge like meal that takes hours and hours to make and it dirties every dish in the kitchen. It can be very simple, but still have a big impact on your health. So the goal here is not restriction. It's not about, not eating foods that you might kind of gravitate a little bit more towards. Those fun, I like to call them fun foods like cakes, cookies, pies, those kinds of things. They're okay in moderation. But what we're talking about today is that foundation that we really need, 80 to 90% of what we're eating to kind of look like this. Okay. So I think it's really important to learn how to prepare meals that are both nourishing and deeply satisfying. So in just a minute, we're going to transition to the cooking demo with Chef Nadia. She's going to show us how to prepare that dish. What's great about this recipe, it uses, pretty simple techniques and accessible ingredients. I always love watching chefs and seeing like little shortcuts that they have that we can then apply in our own kitchen. So, but this is the kind of meal that works well for busy schedules. You can meal prep some of this ahead of time and have it ready to go on those busy nights when you don't have as much time to cook, but we're still getting great flavor and really great nutrition. So as you watch her prepare the dish, I encourage you to notice how these different components of the meal are going to come together, right? Again, we can swap in and out, different protein, different grain, different vegetables, but see how the whole grains really provide that base for that gives you sustained energy. That salmon, it's adding protein and healthy fats. Vegetables and herbs, they're bringing that color, nutrients, those micronutrients, all the minerals and vitamins that we need, and lots of flavor. Olive oil kind of ties everything together. And so this is a really great example of how balanced meals can just, come together with some thoughtfully chosen ingredients. So then after her cooking demo, we're going to come back together for a live Q&A, and there'll be time to ask questions about nutrition and ingredients. And we're happy to talk about practical ways to incorporate, these types of meals into your life. So just for me to finish up, I just want to leave you with a simple takeaway. Supporting your health after cancer does not require complicated diet or extreme restriction. Focus on building meals around whole foods, healthy fats, fiber-rich grains, plenty of vegetables, and over time, those small, consistent choices support your energy, recovery, long-term health. And so that's the reason we're here, right? And so now we've talked about the why. Now we're going to see the how behind Mediterranean eating. It comes down to simple meals, and I am super excited for you to watch this video that Nadia recorded and see how all this can translate into a meal that's nourishing and full of flavor. So let's move into that cooking demonstration.
Owner of Dell Dining here in Atlanta, Georgia. We specialize in private dining, meal prep, and catering, focusing on Mediterranean, Middle Eastern flavors. Really happy to spend the next 30 minutes with you guys, and really grateful to Iris for partnering up to kind of showcase a really lovely, easy weeknight meal that's going to add a little bit of excitement and variety into your rotations. I'm going to do my best job to kind of walk you through this, give you different variations, show you different ways to kind of elevate it if you have the extra time, energy, and interest. First, we're going to kind of talk through all the equipment and ingredients that we have here to kind of make your cooking experience as effective and efficient as possible. So first things first, we have obviously a cutting board. We need a chef's knife. I love this little guy. This is called a bench scraper. You'll see it a lot in baking, but it's a wonderful way to kind of scoop up different ingredients that you're cutting, so you're not kind of shoving it with your knife and potentially hurting yourself, or kind of going back in with your hands multiple times. We obviously have our spices, salt, pepper. I'm going to use a little bit of chili flake today. This is totally optional. We got a little bit of butter, some garlic, our cherry tomatoes right here. I got a lovely lemon and onion, a little bit of Parmesan cheese. Our fats today is going to be some good old olive oil. This is a great brand called Graza. I am going to show you how to make pesto from scratch, but we also have this lovely olive pesto that I picked up from Trader Joe's. Just again, if you're in a pinch, you don't really have the time or energy to cook, this stuff is super great. There's a wonderful fresh pesto that I think Whole Foods carries called Gotham Greens, and it's super clean ingredients made with olive oil, really, really fresh and delicious. You can also pick that up and use it, or you can make your own, which is what we're going to demo for you today super quickly. Other things we have are some walnuts, Any kind of nut is great for pesto. It's a super forgiving recipe. And then I got this farro here, which is also from Trader Joe's. It's a 10-minute cooked, pre-cooked farro, which makes it super, super easy for meal prep. We're going to show you how to cook that up. I got a little bit of fresh rosemary. This is again optional, but the more herbs, the better. And then as far as tools, I got some spoons. I have a fish spatula, a microplane, and a thermometer to make sure my salmon is cooked. These are all, optional. They're the tools that I enjoy cooking with. They range from 10 to 20 bucks, and they're super versatile in the kitchen. So my biggest tip is when you're cooking for meal prep or for your family or whatnot, make sure you have all your ingredients, all your tools, everything in the spot ready to go. So you're not kind of running back and forth throughout the kitchen, grabbing stuff and just, kind of wasting your precious time. So that's what we got. We're going to start cooking now. So the first thing I have here, we're using some king salmon today. Key things that you should look out for, you could talk to your fishmonger at the supermarket, but make sure that the flesh is super firm. Shouldn't be like squishy, shouldn't be slimy, and it should have a really clean scent. You shouldn't get like super fishy scents coming from the fish. And then as far as storage goes, I like to keep it in my fridge with like a little bit of an ice pack over it to make sure it's just staying as cold as possible. So first things first, we're gonna cook this in a little bit, but I'd love to salt it right now just to lightly cure the fish. What this is gonna do, and this is kind of what you do for all proteins, steak, chicken, etc. I'm salting it right now, and it's essentially gonna pull the moisture into the protein. And then going to kind of expel a little bit of that moisture, and you'll see the top of the fish get really, really moist and wet. And then we're going to dab it with paper towel before we introduce it to some oil and heat. That just ensures that A, it's deeply seasoned throughout, and B, it just stays super, super flaky and moist when it's done cooking. So we can kind of set that and forget it, put it to the side. And right here I have an induction burner. This is just so I'm kind of facing you guys the whole time. I'm gonna get a little sauce pot right here, put it on about medium heat. I wanna get a little bit of heat. The number one mistake that I see people make when they're cooking is they'll immediately go ahead and put their fat of choice, be it butter, be it olive oil, into the pan right now. And you don't want to do that because essentially as the pan is heating up and getting up to temperature, you're also heating up the oil at the same time. So by the time the pan is heated up, the oil is going to be like super burnt, smoky, and acrid. So you want to give the pan probably like 2-3 minutes to heat up by itself, and then add your oil in before you introduce the ingredients, okay? So per our recipe that we sent you guys out, we kept this pretty simple. We just said, farro with seasonings and parm. I'm going to again show you different ways in which you can elevate it with kind of minimal effort, just to kind of make the dish a little bit more exciting. And again, if you have the time and energy, sorry about the talk. So I'm going to start with a yellow onion here. I'm just going to kind of your basic, dicing technique. I'm going to go straight down. And then I'm going to put my hand flat, move my fingers away from the knife, and go across. And that'll give you kind of like a cross-hatch pattern, so I can cut really small little onion dices right here. Again, this is super forgiving. You can cut big chunks. You can do rough dice. You can do small dice. Kind of whatever you're feeling. At this point, my pan is likely reheated, so I'm going to go in with a generous, probably like tablespoon of olive oil. I just want the bottom of the pot to be coated in oil. And then we're going to give that probably like 20-30 seconds just to heat up. And this tool, as I mentioned earlier, I'll give you a little bit of a demo of what it looks like to use. So essentially I can kind of scoop up all my ingredients right here, push it onto the flat portion of the bench scraper, and then just pop it right in. And you should hear a sizzle right away. That's because we preheated the pan before we added the oil and the onions into it, all right? So I'm going to turn up my heat a little bit. I want to get a little bit of color on this. And then I'm going to immediately season with a little bit of salt. Again, number one mistake that I see with sauteing in the kitchen or just general cooking is people don't season throughout the cooking process, so they'll just season right at the end. But you want to season kind of every step so everything is really, really well flavored throughout. And I want to pull out a little bit of this moisture in the onions right now so they kind of break down. The best way to do that is to add a little bit of salt so the moisture in the water gets pulled out and we start to see some browning. So I'm going to give this just like, I don't know, a minute or two. Okay. Let that go. I also can add a little bit of garlic at this stage. This flavor that you're going to get from the garlic is just going to be like nice and like mellow, almost like sweet garlic because it's going to cook for at least 15-20 minutes. And another pro tip with garlic, if you buy, you know, it in bulk, the pre-peeled stuff, or you have a lot of the garlic that's about to go bad, I just pop it into one of these little deli containers and keep them in my freezer. And whenever I want it, I can pull it out and kind of use it on hand. So, all right. So we're getting some good color. Things are starting to get translucent. That means the salt's doing its job. It's pulling out its moisture. It's starting to smell really lovely. So as I mentioned before, we're going to use this lovely bag of pre-cooked farro from Trader Joe's. It's in the dry goods section. I'm just going to dump in about, I'm going to say a cup. These are also great because they are, you know, this is a quart, or sorry, this is a pint, this is 2 cups, a quart is 4 cups. So I don't need to bust out my measuring cups as I'm cooking either. So I'm going to go in with about a cup of farro. If you want to meal prep for the week, obviously you can double or triple the recipe. This is also an extra step. I'm going to add a little bit more fat to the pan, and I'm going to start toasting the farro. Similar to if you're familiar with risotto, you want to kind of toast the grain just to add a little bit of nuttiness and texture. Once you start to smell a little bit of that toasty flavor, you are ready to add your liquid. And if you're unfamiliar with farro, it is a really lovely grain that kind of has a chewy texture. It's really nutty. It's super, super nutrient dense. It's really delicious in salads. You can make, you know, you can substitute it for like orzo. I love doing just like a grain salad or using this in substitute of like white rice or something. And it cooks pretty quickly, and again, it stays really well in the fridge. So that's smelling good, it's looking good, nice and toasted. So I'm gonna go in with a little bit of water. I think at this point, you're more than welcome to add chicken stock, beef stock, fish stock would be great if you want more protein or just want to add something with a little bit more flavor. But for the sake of ease, water is perfectly fine. So I'm gonna vigorously bubble. I'm gonna turn down my heat a bit, but we're gonna go in with probably about 2 cups of water. This will cook within like 10 to 15 minutes. And I think I'm a big proponent of, you know, obviously tasting things to see if you like the flavor, but also like flavor, seasoning, texture is all pretty subjective. So if you like it more chewy, a little bit more firm, you can pull it a little sooner. If you like it more soft and digestible in that regard, you can let it cook till it's like almost like porridge. I'm probably gonna let it cook for about 10-15 minutes. Keep an eye on the water level to make sure that it's not reducing too much. So. And then I'm again gonna season because I added all that liquid. Gotta add a little bit more salt. And then I'm just gonna add a few cracks of pepper right in, and that rosemary sprig that I had earlier. I'm just gonna take like, I don't know, 2 inches, pop it in there. You're welcome to add anything from, you know, thyme to bay leaves. Lemon zest would be great. If you have the rind of a Parmesan cheese block, you can totally pop that in. That's a huge flavor booster. Also, when you're done with the cheese, you can save the rinds in your freezer, pop them into soups, into stocks, into stews, and it's such a game changer when it comes to the flavor that you get out of it. So that's good to go. We're gonna kind of forget about that for the next little bit and turn our attention to the salmon. I don't know if you can see here, but if you zoom in, you'll see a little bit of like moisture speckles or water speckles on top of the salmon. That's showing you that the salt has done its thing. It's penetrated. It's released the moisture. It's deeply seasoned the fish. So what we're gonna do is take a paper towel and just blot it pretty dry. Make sure you get all that off. Again, we're popping this in the oven, but generally moisture is kind of like the enemy of browning or flavor. So I would pop this into the oven kind of with all that waterlogged moisture, it would just kind of not get any color. You know, color equals flavor in the cooking world, so we wouldn't really have a good turnout there. So just gonna pat it dry and then pop it onto my sheet tray. So right here, I have a small little aluminum sheet tray. I'm gonna pop the salmon right onto there. Ready, it's already pre-seasoned with salt, so we don't need to add any more. However, I'm gonna go ahead and add my cherry tomatoes and maybe a few garlic cloves. These will kind of perfume the dish, maybe get a little bit jammy, and just, again, it's kind of like a cheat code to have quick and easy roasted garlic on the side. So we're gonna get the cherry tomatoes on. And if you don't have cherry tomatoes, you could use Roma tomatoes. You can kind of use whatever. The reason I like these is when they cook at high heat, they're gonna kind of get charred and blistery and get really jammy and add like a really nice sweet acidity to the dish. You can kind of cover the whole thing. If you wanna chop the rest of your onion and get that on the tray, so you can get some like, you know, toasty caramelized onions or fried onions, you could do that as well. If you want to bulk this up and have more vegetables, you can throw on some green beans, some broccoli, some asparagus would be great. Just make it like a one sheet dinner and call it a day. So we're gonna get that into the oven, but before we do so, I'm gonna give my hands a quick little wash. And then more importantly, going to make sure we add a little bit of fat. So fat, A, carries flavor and B, carries heat, right? So if I were to just put this in the oven as is, it would eventually cook, but like it wouldn't be, it wouldn't be as delicious as it was if you had either butter or oil, and B, you just wouldn't get that browning that we you know have repeated multiple times that really just carries so much flavor. So a little bit of oil. You can add the rest of that rosemary sprig or any herbs that you have. Again, we're going to top this whole piece of salmon in our pesto, so you don't really need anything. Again, I'm just showing you different ways in which you can kind of elevate the dish. So this is ready to go. We're going to pop that in the oven for around 15 minutes. I like to cook salmon to between 135 to 140, and I'll show you how to temp that in a bit. But as long as it looks translucent, you are good to go. So. And I'm gonna go in the second top rack. In the last probably 5 minutes, I'm gonna go to the top rack to get a little bit of nice color there. Okay. So next, we are going to just clean up a bit and do a few last minute things for our farro. And I'm gonna turn that heat up a bit so we can start getting some oiling going on. So farro, again, really wonderful blank canvas. I think a wonderful way to simply season cooked farro is with lemon and garlic and Parmesan and any herb, parsley, basil, oregano, whatever you got. So my rule of thumb with citrus is if you're gonna use the juice, use the zest, right? The zest isn't particularly acidic, but it is super, super floral and fragrant and really delicious. And I love finishing dishes with the zest, not cooking with it, because it will kind of go bitter and you won't really taste any of it. So we mentioned this earlier, this is a microplane. It's a wonderful tool. You can get it for like 15 bucks on Amazon. It's great for grating garlic and ginger and zesting citrus. So what I like to do is hold it in my dominant hand and hold the fruit in my other hand, and kind of like you're gonna rotate around the citrus and pull with the leverage of, I guess, your thumb, if that makes sense. And I'm only trying to get the yellow part. I'm not getting the white part here. That is called the pith. It's quite bitter, so we don't really want to get that into the food. But just one kind of go around, and you'll see you're pulling off all that really lovely zest. And we're going to keep that to the side. And that's kind of like a really easy cheat code to making things not only taste really like bright and flavorful, but kind of reawakening all the ingredients that you kind of cooked with earlier, right? If we're using the zest or the juice, we're going to use the zest. So, and then for lemons, my favorite way to cut them when I'm seasoning stuff is to take off, like they're called lemon cheeks. Oops. So that way you don't get any of the seeds. It's like a nice little, probably 2 tablespoons of citrus zest that I can use to season something right at the end. So you should get 4 of them right there. Okay, so I'm going to put these to the side. When we're ready to use it, we'll use those on both the fish, the pesto, and the farro. So next, we're going to just enter herb land real quick. So again, this is pretty adaptable to any flavor profiles or combinations that you prefer. I know some people really don't like cilantro, some people don't like dill, etc. So if you have a sensitivity to a certain herb, feel free to swap it out for something else, right? So we actually just picked these from our garden earlier. So we have a combination of parsley, basil, and fresh oregano. You're welcome to obviously use dried herbs if you do not have access to fresh herbs, or if you forgot them at the supermarket. They will certainly do just fine. I do suggest cooking with dried herbs and finishing with fresh herbs, just because you don't want to kind of like cook the freshness out of these guys. But I think for today, in the recipe we said parsley. I'm going to just substitute that again to show you the variety here. So we're going to use some fresh oregano, and I'm just going to chop it pretty fine and stir that in right at the end. Okay, that's probably like a tablespoon right there. And then last thing here is a little bit of garlic. And again, we put some garlic in this pan before it started cooking, and I said that was going to lend like a sweet note. I think finishing dishes right when they come off the heat with some raw garlic, you kind of let the residual heat of the pan gently cook that raw garlic, and it adds just like a really lovely another kind of like tone of garlic flavor that I think, again, you're using simple ingredients just like 2 different ways, and it really elevates the dish. So again, using this really handy tool, the microplane, if you can see here, the garlic is beautifully minced. Didn't have to get my hands dirty. Just gonna tap it against the board, and I have it right there, ready to go. So I'm gonna finish it with these 3 ingredients right here. And the beauty of this is by the time this is done cooking, your chopping is done, the salmon should be done, and then you're ready to go. So I'm just gonna fish out my rosemary right here. It could be kind of, pungent and a little bit strong if you leave it in there for too long. So, and at this point, my water is like pretty much 75% reduced. I'm just gonna give it a quick taste to see where we're at texture-wise. Okay, so I would say it's also about 75% done. So this should, once it's reduced all the way, I'm gonna turn it down, manage my heat a little bit. It should be perfectly al dente, which is what I prefer for farro. All right, and then last thing, we got a little block of Parmesan cheese. I love buying cheese whole. I know it takes a little bit more effort to grate it yourself, but pre-grated cheese typically has a lot of like anti-caking agents and starches, and it generally impacts the overall mouthfeel or texture of your dishes because it's adding extra starch, and it's just fresher this way. So microplane, back at it again. This is the superhero tool of the day. So we're just gonna move it along the blade right here, and we'll get almost like a cloud-like texture right there. I'm gonna grate probably 2 to 3 tablespoons. This is all the taste. If you like more cheese, add more cheese. If you don't like cheese at all, you can totally leave this out. If you're dairy-free, you can use like an almond cheese would be great. Or again, this really doesn't need cheese at all. So this plain and simple with just some herbs and lemon zest is perfect in my book. And then lastly, we're going to show you how to make a really, really quick, easy pesto. So pesto, is typically made with basil and nuts and Parmesan cheese and lots of oil. So I have some basil from my garden here that I'm going to just roughly chop real quick, just so I can help the blade out a little bit. Okay. And then I got some really wonderful almonds here that I pre-toasted these. I just keep them in my freezer. That's another pro tip. Nuts have obviously really high fat content, and fat tends to spoil pretty quickly. So If you store them in these little containers or Ziploc bags, whatever you got, and keep them in your freezer, their shelf life is like way, way, way longer than if you were to keep them in your cupboard. They'll just stay fresher for longer. So I'm gonna grab a handful of these and just chop them up just a tad. But these are pre-toasted. So again, the fats in the nuts are want to be introduced to heat to kind of wake up everything. You'll get like a little bit of a nutty flavor. It just adds a little bit more, similar to how, you know, with whole spices, it's important to toast them so you kind of taste them a little bit more. So rough chop there, gonna throw it into this Pyrex. And then a little bit of that lemon zest that I had earlier, I'm gonna throw in. Gonna do a little bit of lemon juice. Okay. Gonna do a clove of garlic. You can add more if you like. This is totally optional. And then you could blend it in a blender, in a food processor, whatever you see fit. So I'm gonna hold this off on the side, switch our attention back to this pot right here. So fully cooked, it's nice and tender. There's just a little bit of liquid left, which is great because I'm gonna emulsify some cheese into this. And I want that cheese with the water and all the starches of the farro to kind of make like a really creamy sauce similar to like cacio e pepe or risotto, as we talked about earlier, right? So the heat is off. I'm gonna use the residual heat in the pan again to add a little bit of garlic, kind of wake up the garlic notes there. You should immediately start to smell it. It's really, really lovely. Gonna do probably a teaspoon for my serving size here of the fresh oregano. You can add dried. Again, if you just want to do parsley, that is perfectly fine. And then we're going to go with a little bit of lemon zest. Okay. And then lastly, go in with just a little bit of cheese and give that a nice stir. Again, we're not on the heat. If you were to cook this over the heat, the cheese would kind of coagulate and get really grainy. So we want to just do that over the residual heat of the pan. And if you can kind of see here, with all the starches, it should be really nice and creamy, but you still have the individual granules of farro. Okay, so that's done. That's good to go. We can kind of keep that on the stove, let it go. You can cover it if you want to keep it warm until the rest of everything is ready to go. All right, and if we want to quickly turn our attention to the oven, cooking is all about kind of maintaining different tasks at the same time. So it's probably been about 5 minutes, I would say. We're starting to get translucent on the top. My tomatoes are starting to blister. They're really nice and jammy. And, you know, a lot of cooks talk about like the touch of protein to see if it's cooked. This is still really, really soft. You just saw my finger indent. That means it's pretty raw in the center. So we're just gonna let that go probably for another like 5-10 minutes. And then finish it off with the pesto at the end. And speaking of, so right here we had the remainder of all the stuff for our homemade pesto, in case you guys would like to take a stab at that. I'm gonna grate a little bit more cheese and get that right in here. And this is again like a super basic classic pesto. The one we picked up from Trader Joe's, as I mentioned earlier, has olives in it. That would be a wonderful addition. You could also make a red pesto, which has like sun-dried tomatoes and roasted red peppers. So you can kind of do different versions based on your palate. So this tool right here is called an immersion blender. Totally optional. Again, you can use a food processor here or just cut it all with your knife. But I love this tool because it is just basically a blender in stick form. So I don't need to like dirty another dish or transport this to another piece of equipment. I can just stick the blender tip right into kind of like a tall glass container here and then start blending. And again, I'm making a pretty small batch here, just to give you kind of a visual of what this dish looks like. But we're gonna add a little bit more liquid so we can get it going. All right. And some people like their pesto really, really creamy. Some people prefer their pesto more chunky. Total preference. And the most important part is to taste it and make sure that your salt levels are good, your acid levels are good, and it's where you want it. So I'm add a little bit more salt. The garlic is great. I get the Parmesan. I get a little bitterness from the olive oil. Really nice basil flavor. I'm gonna add a little bit more lemon. And why not? Again, versatility. I'm gonna add some of that leftover oregano that we had. Okay, so that's ready to go. And this is our jarred pesto here. Totally, any option works. We're just gonna top the fish with that and then serve it up. And we're gonna wrap it all up right now. We pulled this out of the oven about 3-4 minutes ago. It took about 15 minutes. I got a little meat thermometer here, just again to show you the proper way to temp proteins. You want to kind of put it halfway through, let it climb. This is reading at 143. And I like to, make sure I'm getting it in multiple areas just to see what our average temperature is. So this is around 145. You can cook salmon anywhere from 125 to 145, just depending on how you like it texture-wise, right? So for plating, I like to go down with a little bit of my farro. And again, I'm cooking this for myself, so I've been tasting from the same spoon. But if you're doing this for your family or for your friends, I suggest doing tasting with various spoons or washing the utensils in between. Anyway, so we got our lovely farro, and I'm gonna go in with a little bit of this salmon right on the side, and just a few of my blistered tomatoes that are really lovely and jammy. If you can see, they're kind of like the skins are blistered off. They got a little bit of color, right? If you remember, our piece of roasted garlic is also super, super soft and squishy now. If you want to put a whole garlic, bulb of garlic there, you can get roasted garlic in 20 minutes. I like to finish this with just a little squeeze of lemon. Fish and lemon are really, great friends. This is our homemade pesto that we made. I fortified this with just a little bit more parsley. And if you want to keep this in your fridge, it will last up to a week in your fridge in an airtight container. Just make sure you put a little bit of olive oil on top to stop oxidation from happening. So I'm going to go in with the pesto just on the side, so I can kind of, tailor each bite to my own taste. And then again, we got this jarred pesto, just, if you want to try side by side of the difference. This one has artichokes and olives. So you can do it two ways, right? You can add it on the side, or you can add it on top and bake it for the last 5 minutes so it can kind of create a nice little crust. Completely up to you. But this is the final dish. If you want to be really fancy, you can finish it with some fresh cracked pepper, a little bit more cheese. Again, these are all optional steps. The bare bones of this recipe is just farro, salmon, and tomatoes and pesto. But I hope you guys enjoy. Please let us know if you have any questions.
That was great. Thank you so much, Chef Nadia. We have a few more minutes, so if we have some questions, we can take any questions. Anyone have something they want to ask?
Yeah,
Who's ready for lunch?
That was great. I'm so hungry. Was it good, Nadia?
It was delicious. It was really, really good. I enjoyed it a lot. It was light, fresh, but I think similar to your last few slides, I think it's really important to not skimp on the not only versatility, but the satisfaction and nourishment of clean eating, right? I think that's something that I hold very dear to my ethos of how I cook. It's we can season it super deeply and still eat very healthy and clean. And there's so many easy ways to do that once you just understand the basics. So, and I think something I mentioned at the end of the video may have gotten cut off, but this recipe is super adaptable to like different cuisines, right? So if you want to do like an Asian take on salmon and farro, you can season the farro with like grated ginger and cilantro, right? And then marinate the fish in like soy sauce and sriracha, and then you're using the same kind of like base ingredients. You're just tailoring the seasoning to like a different palate, if that makes sense. You can do the same with like Latin American cuisine. You can do like cilantro, lime, farro, right? Or quinoa. Someone, I think Wendy asked in the chat. And then you can season the fish with like smoked paprika and serve it with a side of guacamole or something like that, right? So you're just taking that like basic framework and just plugging and playing different ingredients to just kind of change the overall taste.
Exactly. Yeah, that's such a good point. It's, Mediterranean, it's been studied a lot in terms of the scientific world for its, nutrition properties, but Asian cuisine, South American cuisine, there's so many other great ways to enjoy food. And so I think it's Mediterranean-ish, right, that we can focus on too. Yeah, that's a really important point. Yeah, that's good. Well, no questions. Well, we must have done our job, Nadia. I think, I learned a lot. I don't know about everybody else, but just seeing her, how she held her knife and how she chopped her onion. And, she's a professional. Okay. So I just want to, if we're not super comfortable in the kitchen as much as Nadia is, this is what she does for a living. So just remember that. And I love watching cooking shows because you pick up on things. It's like, oh, she did that with the lemon. Like I didn't know that you could make lemon cheeks. Is that what you call them? I think that is, you learn things, and then as you cook more, you get more confident. I have a lot of clients who don't like, they say when we first start working together, they don't like cooking. It's like, is it that you don't like it or you're just not confident in the kitchen? And it's usually the later. Um, they just don't, they never learned, or every time they try to make something, it burns. That is completely normal and understandable, and it's frustrating. But also to try one new thing a week, I think is really, really important because the more you do cook for yourself or cook for others, you have more control over your ingredients and you can cook things that you really like, and you can get better at it. And then it becomes to where, oh yeah, I've totally got 5 or 6 dishes that I can make without a recipe, and they're always, there for me to cook. So I don't know if that helps, but I just want to encourage people to get in that kitchen.
It
Okay,
looks like
Nadia's froze.
Nadia,
Yeah.
yeah, Nadia's
Okay.
internet froze a bit. But Caitlin, can you answer the question that was in the chat? What is the best way to get fresh herbs to last if you're cooking for two?
Yeah, I'm sure Nadia has got a great tip here, but I will say what I do is you can buy little herbs that are still plants, like they still have the, soil on the bottom, and just get a little container and you can stick it on your porch or your deck or out the back, at the windowsill, and keep watering it like it is a plant, right? So you can do that. That's one way. And then I know that I don't know if this is chef approved, but you can also take herbs and, take them to where they're no longer attached to the soil, like they're ready to kind of be ready to use in your cooking. And then put them in a little bit of water, in a glass, kind of glass, like a mason jar with just a little bit of water, like maybe a centimeter or two of water, and stick it like they're flowers almost, and stick them in the fridge that way. I know they can stay pretty fresh that way. Or again, get them ready like rosemary and things like that. Wash them, put them in a paper towel that's a little bit damp, and then maybe, stick that rolled up paper towel in the refrigerator, maybe putting it in a little container with a lid on it so it doesn't get dried out. Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
do.
Caitlin, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm on Hannah's laptop. Sorry, I don't know what
Okay.
happened to my internet. But yeah, I echo that. I think the best ways that I find is the second you bring the herbs home from the grocery store, clean them right away. Get them in water, and never, like, I find that some people, get a bowl, put the herbs in, or lettuce, whatever, and then like dump the water upside down. So you're basically putting all you're like moving all the dirt at the bottom back on top once you like flip it upside down, if that makes sense. I wish you could see me so I can show a visual, but basically take out the herbs from atop the water and like put them separately away, if that makes sense. Um
Yeah.
so that's
I can see you, Hannah. I'm Nadia. Uh-oh. Did it freeze again?
fridge, or the other best way, which Caitlin also mentioned, is just putting them in a jar, like a mason jar with a little bit of water, and they'll keep a lot longer that way in your fridge.
Mm-hmm.
I love these tips. Lots of great stuff in the video, Nadia, for just our amateur cooks and things that I just forget about when I'm cooking. I love to see all the tools and everything too.
Oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah. They help a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, and the
Get you
herbs that
excited.
are not as like delicate. So something like basil doesn't freeze as well, but something like a
Mhm.
rosemary could. Yeah, for sure.
All right.
Yeah,
Any
agreed.
last questions from anyone in the group? We so enjoyed having you today. Thank you so much, Caitlin and Chef Nadia. Thanks to everyone who participated in the webinar. We do have some information on how to connect with either Caitlin or Nadia if you'd like to. And I'll be sending out some follow-up information, including the links to the video. It may be tomorrow before I have the links ready, but we'll be sending out some follow-up info so you can have all of the information at your fingertips. You should have also been able to see the recipe in your reminder emails that you got the last day or two. So I'll include that as well. All right.
Thank
Any other
you.
questions?
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day and go make some yummy food.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, guys.